What's going on, YouTube? My name is Max Beaupre, and I'm here to run you through my 2025 Tennessee Knockout Ultra B race build. There's a lot of different things going on with this bike. I virtually had to replace every single bolt on it so it wouldn't break. But at the end of the day, it worked out super well. Huge shout out to Ride Sirris and Charge Cycle Works for getting my bike dialed in. Sirris just totally got me on the suspension part. Been working with them for just about a year now, since last year's Tennessee Knockout, and yeah, the suspension's been a huge game changer for me. And on top of that, shout out to the boys at Charge Cycle Works. They hooked me up with all the hard parts and team support at the event that I ever could have needed, and I'm super stoked to be working with them for the foreseeable future. So first, we're gonna start off with suspension. So up front, I got the Sirris F43 forks. It's got 265 mils of travel. Well, there's a couple different options. There's a 245 option, there's a 265 option, so you can kind of like play with whatever kind of works best for you. I chose the longer travel option just because I'm kind of a little bit more enticed to, you know, send bigger jumps and drops and stuff. We're in the woods because I'm a mountain bike guy, you know, so I like hitting big free ride stuff. This is actually their trail tune suspension, which is a tune that I think they OEM spec this suspension with if you were to just go buy it out on the internet or at a shop. So I'm basically riding stuff that everybody else rides. It's nothing different. It's all pretty much the same. I just happen to have maybe a little bit stiffer compression dampening just because I'm riding a little bit faster. So yeah, I set it up just like my mountain bikes. I don't like a ton of compression. I'm more of a rebound guy, so I just run super high rebound, minimal compression, more low speed than not, just to keep the small bump chatter at a minimum, and or keep the bike more composed and small bump chatter rather. And then in the back, we have the R46 Sirris shock. It's got a huge shock damper shaft. I was a little bit curious as to how I was going to say that there, because that could have ended up a little bit poorly for me, if you know what I'm saying. But anyways, yeah, so this is the R46 shock. This suspension actually features hydraulic bottom-out bumpers, which is actually a huge plus. That actually comes stock in production RockShox forks. They're the suspension sponsor that I ride for on my factory mountain bike team, RA Factory Racing. And it's a huge plus to have in your suspension, because when you go off a huge compression, drop, jump, you go deep, land pretty hard. It's basically, you have this cups that sits at the bottom, and you have it's basically a needle valve. So you have a needle that sits at the bottom of your damper cartridge or whatever. I'm sorry, Phil and Kent, they would probably know how to say this better than I would. But basically that needle fills a void, a hydraulic void, and what that accomplishes is at the very end of your stroke in the travel, it ramps up essentially the compression super hard, so it doesn't just like slam metal to metal. You can feel it through your wrists and your ankles, and it kind of aches, you know what I mean? So that's a huge plus to have on a dirt bike, which I personally haven't had before. I've been out of the motorcycle racing game for a while. So yeah, the suspension has been a huge game changer for me. The only thing, here, let me show you. The only thing you got to do to accommodate the Sirris suspension, just because it's a little bit bigger in diameter around the spring in the rear, is you got to get, here, I'll show you right here. See this triangle? This is actually a Sirris branded suspension triangle. And what that does is it's got a larger diameter on the inside here to accommodate the bigger oversized spring on the aftermarket suspension. So that's pretty much the only change you gotta make in the rear end. While we're actually on the topic of the rear end, there's a couple different things that I did to make it a little bit more, run a little bit more fluidly, you know. These is essentially the secondary pivot. So inside of those bolts, if you will, there used to be just brass bushings. So there was no sort of bearing whatsoever. So there was a lot of resistance that's created over time as the bike wears and, you know, develops a little bit of tolerance play here and there. So I actually used the Warp 9 linkage bearing swap kit. Sorry. I'll attach a link in the description, but basically, instead of having brass bushings right in here, you have these little roller needle bearings that you press in, And then these bolts actually have Zerk fittings on the end, grease fittings, as you can see right there. And, oh, well, I can't talk about that too much. I don't know. We'll see. I might have to chop this up a little bit. But anyways, yeah, so you insert a grease gun right in the end there in that little hole. And you can actually grease the bearings from the outside of the bike, which is super cool. Super cool. Makes the rear end flow so much better than with the stock brash bushings. So outside of that, we actually have a little bit of something here from Warp 9 with some more grease fittings. Pretty cool. Can't say terribly too much about it yet, but it's working really well. Had massive success with it at Tennessee Knockout, and I'm really excited to see how it develops in the future. So anyways, we're going to move down to my foot peg situation. Check it out right here. We got the Warp 9 Ultra B foot pegs. On top of that, I topped it off with a titanium Warp 9 foot peg pivot pin. Just to, the steel tends to bend a little bit here and there, and like all of the steel bolts or whatever that come in this bike stock. So I actually, you can see, replaced pretty much every single bolt that matters and to titanium, just so it stop breaking. But another thing you got to be careful about with the foot pegs on the Surons, the Ultra Bs. If you can see here, let me try and get a good angle. You can see that nut on the back side here. So basically these two bolts, this is a foot peg bracket. These two bolts, they have threads right here on the inside of the frame. And what'll actually tend to happen is these bolts will come loose and bend, and then there won't be a flush mating surface here. So what I did to fix that, because I snap the pegs off all the time. Go to the hardware store, get grade 8 hardware, the black bolts, and get lock nuts. I didn't put a washer on the back. I just got those polymer lock nuts or whatever they are. And because as you can see, the bolt comes right out the back side of the frame here, so you can do that on the top bolt on either side to help prevent your foot pegs from snapping off all the time. So that's been a huge plus for me. Drivetrain wise, I went with a 52 tooth re-gear. I actually have a aftermarket Warp 9 13 tooth sprocket in the front, which is stock. But these bikes come stock with a 46 or a 48 tooth chainring. I went up to a 52 to get more torque for the more trialsy hard enduro stuff that I do. If you're gonna ride this bike in the track, you'd probably want to go with a 44 or a 42, you know, something that's gonna give you a little bit more top speed. On top of that, I run a DID chain. You really just can't beat them. They just don't break. You beat the hell out of them on rocks and whatever else, and they just don't break. They're super bulletproof. On top of that, we get the Warp 9 titanium axle. Thing stays super strong, super tight, and super straight, accommodated by the Warp 9 axle box. So it's all a perfect fit. Warp 9 makes a really cool tool to pull the axle in and out, which is super, super nice. Keeps your hands from getting all greasy and such. So we're going to move over to our brake side now. So over here, I have the stock Suron brakes, which are just Suron branded brakes, as you can tell. But I did go with the upgraded Warp 9 240 millimeter floating rotor. So at the end, it's a little bit thicker. I believe it's 3.0. I could be wrong. I'll have to check the spec on that. But the rotors themselves are a little bit thicker. So it improves your brake response and gives them a little bit more power just because of the increased cooling effect. Before we get away from the rear end of the bike here, I want to talk about arguably the most important part of my bike. One of them, to say the least, is wheel and tire setup. I've been running these KKE wheels. You can get them on Amazon, like wherever. We just bought them for my Tennessee Knockout bike last year, and they've lasted that long, actually, which is insane, like with minimal spoke tensioning as well. So would definitely recommend the 2118 KKE wheel set, like, to anybody. I have no affiliation with them, but they are super durable. So tire setup. This is super important on an e-bike for hard enduro, or for any hard enduro bike. So I run an IRC JX8. JX8, best tire on the market right here. It's got a little bit stiffer sidewall than their IX9 tire, which is the same tread pattern with a little bit softer sidewall. So it tends to waller a little bit. This JX8 is a little bit stiffer. I run a plushy bib, which is a 6 to 8 PSI bib, and then I drill 16 to 18 holes in it. Could be wrong. Boys at Creedsville fact check me on that. They did it for me. Yeah, so I don't necessarily have to worry about flats because I have a piece of foam. For the mountain bike people, it's basically just like a cush core, but you just don't have to run any air. It's just a foam insert that takes up all the space throughout the tire and the wheel. And yeah, so you can just smash it into rocks as hard as you want and it will never flat. So moving to the front end of the bike, right here, we have the front 21-inch wheel. I'm running a Bridgestone M59 front tire. I've actually really liked this tire. My dad recommended me this tire. Shout out John Beaupre, the legend. Don't love you too, Mom. Would never forget you. Yeah, so this Bridgestone M59, super awesome front tire for our enduro, and it's actually a motocross front, but works really, really well in the slippery, wet roots and rocks. I have another plushy bib in here that is not drilled; it's just heavily used. It's a 6 to 8 psi plushy bib, and again, we got the 240 mil Warp 9 floating rotor in the front, same set of stock Sauron brakes. Pretty straightforward setup, as well as the titanium front axle. Again, superior strength and durability. So now we're gonna kind of run through my controls, at the hands and such. So most of you know this is, it's an electric dirt bike. It doesn't have a clutch. So as you can see, I just got one brake lever here, one brake lever here. Mountain bike people, no, this is not set up like a mountain bike. All of my mountain bikes are actually set up motor style, so my rear brake is on the left side. So this is your rear brake on the e-bikes, and this is your front brake, just like a motorcycle, but it's got a handbrake, not a foot brake. As you can see, I kind of sprinkled it off with a couple of titanium bolts here and there, just to stiffen the bike up a little bit. I run these Enduro Engineering wraparound handguards just because I don't like destroying my grips because I fall a lot because I'm 5 feet tall on a good day. I'm actually 5'4", but what's the difference? It's pretty much a legal midget either way. Yeah, so, they bolt into the end of the bars here, so it doesn't destroy your grip when you go down. As you can see, they're heavily used because I crash all the time, because my legs can't touch the ground, even on this small of a rig. I pretty much need something like that to be able to touch the ground all the time. So, my favorite grip are the Renthal Extra Soft grips. Just get them off Amazon, super cheap. They're like $11 a pair, super nice. I run the world's most clapped grip donuts. As you can tell, but yeah, so outside of that, you got to be super careful with these bikes and the bolts that come stock with them. They tend to come loose often and actually end up breaking or harming more equipment on the bike. Like I was saying about these foot pegs earlier, when you get the bike, just drill the threads out of this. I mean, you can thread the bolt in with the threads that are in the frame, but I would just totally recommend as you can see back here, you have to cut the bolt short enough, but it will clear this pulley wheel if you do it right. I'm telling you, if you're riding hard enduro, smacking your pegs on rocks, you gotta beef up these peg bracket bolts because they just don't last. And one other thing down here is I have a aftermarket Warp 9 belt tensioner. It just makes belt tensioning a little bit easier. It's got a T30 and a 10 mil wrench head there, so you can grab a socket or a wrench or whatever, depending on what you like using or what's in your toolbox, to tighten up the belt, which makes it a little bit more user-friendly. And then outside of that, like all of the major frame connecting points for the controller, the motor, the subframe, the battery tray, everything, they're all titanium bolts. I had problems with these backing out and breaking on me, and then the motor's just going all over the place, so that was a huge help. Huge thanks to Warp 9 and Charge Cycle Works for organizing that for me. And then this wrap too. It's a ECD wrap. You can get them on Charge Cycle Works. I got a bunch of different designs. Super, super cool. You get your name, your number, all your sponsors. Like, check it out. US Hard Duro, Motor X, Warp 9, the Charge logo. They got it all dialed. So that was really cool. Huge thanks to Brett and everybody else who helped organize this bike for me. And one more thing, brake levers. I went with Brett actually recommended these to me. These are the Zap levers. As you can see here, they've got a really nice contact point for your fingers. They're not too sharp or too crazy curved, so you're just slipping off all the time. They got a really nice spot to rest your hand with your finger, whether you like it in the crevice there or right. I tend to like hanging my finger off. Sometimes I break with my middle finger there, so I put it in a little loop at the end. Gives you a little bit more consistency. But yeah, that's pretty much my 2024 Ultra B race build. that kind of covers pretty much all the major talking points I had with this bike. And outside of that, they're pretty bulletproof. The only other thing I would say is if you own these and you tend to ride them harder than the average person, watch out for cracking right under the main brace where the shock connects to the rear swing arm. It tends to crack over time, with heavy use. So, that's just a big safety thing. That'll tend to happen, when you're slamming it into corners and, charging hard through rock gardens. You might case something and, whoa, see that? Moth just flew in my face. So that's definitely something you want to keep an eye out for. But outside of that, they're great bikes. This is actually Surron's race model bike that was never actually released. This is a 30 horsepower model. It's 22.5 kilowatts peak. Crazy amount of power. Instant torque is just so sick. And I'm not the guy that's here to be like electric's taking over and all this stuff. I raced gas bikes a bunch growing up as a kid, even before mountain biking. And it's just super fun. It's the most fun thing I own, genuinely. It's just like a mountain bike with 30 horsepower, it's just such a unique experience to have as a rider, just being able to jib a dirt bike, and what I mean by that is, playing off of rocks and side hits on the trail and just, going wherever you want. And it's just a dream. I'm very thankful to have found this, and, all of the friends and people I've met through the hard enduro community have been super nice to me and welcoming, and I'm the token weird dude riding around on the electric bike. So just been super cool to get integrated with the hard enduro community and the whole e-moto community. It's actually pretty cool. So, I have no plans of stopping and, just kind of taking it as the days go by and figuring it all out. But, it's all new, so I'm trying to capitalize on that. And, if you guys have any questions about, my setup or tips and tricks for installing belts or chains or, whatever, leave a comment, let me know. Or even if you have any questions about, my setup, what I run for spring rate and compression rebound settings, I'm here to help, and I'd like to, share what little knowledge I have of, to try and help other people get better at this and enjoy it just as much as I do, So, that pretty much wraps it up. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been my, what if we did a little review here? So, I've been on these for a year now. So, all in all, pretty bulletproof bike for the average consumer. It's pretty robust machine for what it is, at the end of the day, it is an electric motorcycle, and this is a pretty new thing in the world, right? So, I understand there's a lot of skepticism with it, and, they still have a long way to go, and this is kind of not necessarily one of the first renditions of an e-moto race bike, right? There's been a bunch of people who race these before and whatever, but, this is kind of my take on what's worked best for me and whatnot. But overall, these bikes are super fun, really reliable. I haven't had virtually any issues with powertrain or, whatnot. Granted, this is some kind of special edition bike that, the average consumer can't buy. But, from my personal experiences, the Surron system has been very reliable. And, I've had a really good time on it. The battery's pretty robust. The motor and controller have great longevity in them. And, the only thing I kind of have a gripe with is just the peg snapping off and the swing arm cracking sometimes. But, that's the nature of the beast when it's not easy enduro, it's hard enduro, So, robust machine and great bang for your buck. Granted, this is not your $6,500 Ultra B for sure by any means, this is, I don't know if you could put anything else on it to make it better outside of a 6 set of wheels and hubs, you know what I mean? Probably from Warp 9 if you're asking me, right? But, just for the money, for anybody wanting to get into hard enduro, even the light B in the back there, I took my buddy Chuck, Charlie Goldman on his first hard enduro ride today. He rode the small bike, and he got to learn a bunch of the do's and don'ts and reading terrain and such. So it's a really cool way to get people into the sport and just have more people on the trails riding. That's what I'm all about. So just to recap, pretty much do everything titanium or grade 8 out of the box. Just strip it and replace it. It's a pain, but it trust me, it'll work wonders not leaving you stranded on the trail. Always carry a spare master link with you. You brake chains in these a lot because of the instant torque. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Side-by-side skid plate too. That's a must. But yeah, so anyways, I'll stop talking. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been my review and my setup on my 2025 Sauron Ultra B Charged Cycle Works Edition. And yeah, leave a comment, like, whatever you want. If you hated it, dislike it, that's totally fine by me. I'm here for it. So yeah, thanks again for watching, and let me know what you want to see next. You never know what could come across the channel. This is my first one of these, so if I missed something or you'll see something you want to know more about, let me know. You know what I mean? So yeah, thanks everybody again. You have a blessed night. We'll see you guys soon.